Another thing that we've seen learning leaders struggle with is actually assessing whether people who are getting trained are applying what they are learning on the job. So what are some ways that you're measuring success of your learning, your classroom training
I
program?
want Dennis to talk about what he talked to Regis and myself about about the survey that you do there, because I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, when in banking, the silos are unbelievable. You could have two departments that haven't talked to each other for a year, and when they do, they're angry. They walk in a room, they're automatically angry. You better fix your systems because you make it hard for us to do business. And, well, you guys never do the paperwork correctly. So if you would do your paperwork, it's constantly back and forth. And the level of service was it was typical of the industry, but it really wasn't good. And so my CEO said, well, we need customer service training. I said, well, I know, but they don't want to give good customer service because they don't think that they give bad customer service. They think he's an idiot.
Hey, I'm not an idiot.
You know what I'm saying?
I hope you're not pointing at me, right?
Well, I meant the guy behind
Right,
you.
right,
So it's like they're all screwed up. We're not screwed up. If they would, so that's typical in companies. So what we did was I put together an internal survey 2.5 years ago, and what we did was I hired a company. And we send to employees, we pick 50 employees a week. Now, we have 1,800. So it's 50 employees a week are randomly selected to answer a 6-question survey about their experience working with another department in the bank in the last 30 days. And they get to survey and evaluate 3 experiences. And I did not make friends. I mean, everyone in the bank thought that was just, we're being policed. And I said, no, we just want to measure good customer service. And we know that you're offering good service, so now we want to quantify it and measure it. And so we had a pretty cool experience. We had the accounting department, who was the highest educated, highest paid, biggest egos. And they, on a scale of 1 to 5, couldn't get past a 2. Because every week, someone would say, yes, I dealt with the accounting department. They were not happy to deal with me. They did not return my phone call. They gave me wrong information, and they had an attitude. And every department head would get a copy of that survey, and they would get their scores for the week. And week after week, the accounting department couldn't get past 2. The human resource department was getting 1s and 2s because they were brutal. They were not nice. And all of a sudden, the department head would call me and say, how do I get to 4? And I said, because what was happening is the president and the board of directors were getting a report every month of the scores of the departments. And the question was, you guys are highly educated. You can't give good customer service. Why is Mary yelling at people? Because that would be on the survey. I mean, it was brutal. People would throw people under the bus and say, Dennis doesn't return phone calls. And that would be on the survey. And every department head in the bank would see that I didn't return a phone call that week. And I'm going to tell you something, it changed behaviors. And all of a sudden, they wanted, but interesting thing, we didn't spend a nickel on customer service training. They fixed it themselves. They got the report, they sat with their team, and they said, listen, Dennis, stop yelling at people when they call. Okay, because we want to get past 2, and we want to get to 3. And it's 3 years now, and the average score in the bank is 4.25. Wow. And the accounting department is getting an award next week at our annual award dinner because their score is 4.75.
Wow. Now you're not going to be able to live with them now.
Well, see, but they started to become humble because they started to realize these are our peers. We have to be nice to them. They changed some systems. They early retired one person who was just brutal. I mean, she was horrible. And they got rid of her. And they said, listen, you got to leave. You got to go. And they got rid of her. But that changed the whole bank internally because we are monitoring behavior every week. Now they have a reason to look for ways to get better because they're being measured. And their pride comes in, their ego comes in, because now they walk around going, yeah, we got 5s. Now we have a whole campaign now, strive for 5. And if you get 5 5s in a row, you get lunch in your department. And the bank will pay for it. So now we have a whole campaign around it. It didn't start that way. But now it grew into, and now on our performance scores, to get a performance bonus merit pay, you cannot score less than 4.5 as an average score in your department if you want to get that bonus. So now we attached a little bit of money to it to give good customer service. But that evolved. over 3 years. It wasn't initially that way. So I think that it's really establishing the need to get better is before do we do customer service training. Because people have to know, why do I need to do it? Who cares? Well, now they're being measured. And it's great how it's working. And then we're expanding the program, adding a couple of new questions to it. So it's working real well for us.
Regis?
No, I think that's a great answer. You know, I think that there has to be the WIFM, like you're talking about, the what's in it for them. Without that, nobody's going to change any behavior, right? And managers, we rely on our managers to hold their teams accountable as much as possible because it isn't our job. It's not HR, it's not training. We can't follow people around all the time and shouldn't have to. It should really be the managers that are working with their people on an ongoing basis and then reporting back, like how are they developing? Are they now doing those behaviors? So some things you can measure. You know, a salesperson comes to sales training and their revenue is going up. That's easy to quantify. Some other things are just anecdotal, and I rely a lot on anecdotal feedback. So one person, for example, in the UK, she has dyslexia, and we were doing presentation training in London, and after the session, she came to me and said, you know, this isn't applicable because a lot of the things that harm me and are my challenges are completely different. And so I worked with her one-on-one for over a month, and she presented at a conference recently, and afterwards people said it was so amazing, I want to work at BuzzFeed now, and that I could just go home after that, you know. And so there's a lot of ways to measure it. I wouldn't rely just on the numbers of things. I think that's great, but the anecdotal stuff is what gets me out of bed every day.
Can I add one? We just rolled out a whole competency program. 8 competency families, and we're going to be self-assessing and management assessment. We have a whole program we rolled out. It took 2 years to put together. And how do we get people to really take counseling to get better? We don't want people to think, well, I talked to my supervisor, and he told me I don't have to work on anything, so I'm good, right? And you have to work on 2 things, so you're not as good as me. And I didn't want that in the organization, so we're creating a video right now, an e-learning module that teaches people that unless you're working on at least 3 things a year, you're not really growing. And so how do we get people to really buy into that? And so we just got approval yesterday that I'm going to have my president, my CEO, my CLO, and 2 people from the board, and we're going to do a video, and they're going to mention 3 things that they're working on this year. And that is going to be the message to the organization that the top people in the organization are trying to get better also. So it's not for you, but it's for us. And that's the approach. And I think it's going to work because people are going to say, wow, Kevin, the president of the company, is working on listening skills. That's great. And he's humble enough to tell us, and I'm motivated, and I'll work on something. So that's using psychology. That's figuring out a way to touch people, to pay attention. And so they're excited about this. Say, yeah, I'll tell people. My wife told me I'm not a good listener. Yeah, I'll tell people I got to work on that. And so it's really looking at, there's so much more that I'm learning by studying positive psychology and emotional intelligence and happiness. If there's one thing that you need to get really well-versed around is the topic of happiness. Happiness motivates people to grow. Happy people want to grow. Stressed people don't want to grow. People that are inundated don't want to grow. They don't have time to grow. Happiness and growth go together. There's a psychological connection between the 2. So that's a topic. Happiness, we say it all the time. Happiness, we take very seriously in our organization. Happy people are hopeful. Hopeful people want to get better. So it's all connected. It's all connected. So.